The Green Bay Packers set a new standard for themselves defensively after shutting down the Houston Texans. Plus, our pal Lily Zhao joins us for our new schedule, a Tuesday Zhao You Doing, next on Locked On Packers.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify. Wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. You need Game Time in your life. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase for last-minute tickets. What time is it? Game time. The Green Bay Packers dominated defensively on Sunday against the Houston Texans, and in doing so, have set a new standard for what is expected from this defense. And I don't mean that they're going to hold every quarterback they play to 55 net passing yards, or that they are going to, in non-turnover situations, hold every quarterback to, or opposing offense to 6 total points. But the Packers love to talk about the standard. The standard. This is the new standard, and it is in part an identity. On Friday, Ali Connolly and I talked about wondering what had taken so long with some of these adjustments with Jeff Hafley and what the next evolutions were. And then Jeff Hafley went out and talked about, hey, look, the defense is in its infancy. Ali and I had talked, I think, Thursday late, and then Jeff talked on Friday and said, look, we're rolling this out slowly. There was nothing slow about what we saw from this defense on Sunday. Everything was fast. Everything was aggressive. And they put together one of the great defensive performances of the last 24 years plus in this franchise, going back a while to find a recent performance where they played a quarterback of this stature and put together a stretch of play like this. And they did it without Quay Walker for most of the game. We don't need to get too far down that rabbit hole, though. I would very much like to see Edgerrin Cooper and Eric Wilson played together. I thought Eric Wilson acquitted himself quite nicely as the Mike linebacker in this game. And when he was asked to play last year in the middle, I thought he played well too. The Pro Football Focus grades would agree with that. Maybe draft pedigree and some of the physical tools have tantalized the Packers, have intrigued them, and have blinded them in a way to say, well, we think he can do all of these things. And then over and over, you realize he can't. So maybe a guy that showed all of those traits, the sacks, the TFLs, the passes, defense. He's actually made, Eric Wilson has made more plays in limited action this year. I'm talking about splash plays, impactful plays in limited action, playing like 15, 20% of snaps than Quay Walker has playing 100% of snaps. That's just indisputable. The Packers have found a style of play that works for them. Simulated pressure. They brought a blitz on 10 of 15 CJ Stroud dropbacks on third down. And yet, they only brought 5 or more, less than 18% of the time total on the day. And what is crazy about that, and you may say, but Peter, that's impossible. How can that be? He only threw the ball 21 times. He also got sacked 4 times. He also scrambled a couple times. But Here's the thing. You can blitz and send 4. These simulated pressures that they have started to lean on, the Brian Flores model, the Mike McDonald model, we see other teams trying to use this and they have not been able to use it to the same degree because they don't have the players to make it work. You show 7 at the line of scrimmage. You drop out and you only bring 4, but it is a weird 4. You drop an edge and you bring a safety, Xavier McKinney, off the corner. The Xavier McKinney sack, they show 7. And then what happens is Rashawn Gary is lined up next to Xavier McKinney. And maybe this is going to have to be a tendency breaker that they come up with. But in a way, that's the tell. Because what they want is they want you to think Rashawn Gary is coming. He loops. And now, so that guy who's thinking he's going to block Rashawn Gary is going, well, I don't have to block him. Oh, no. And Xavier McKinney is right by him, unblocked for the sack. But then you also have that first drive, that first third down stop. They get Rashawn Gary unblocked up the middle on a cross dog blitz where Edgerrin Cooper comes in. He takes it's basically a pick. He comes in, he gets the blocker, and then Rashawn Gary runs almost untouched right into CJ Stroud's lap. Those plays are so effective. And this is the world now. This is where defense, JT O'Sullivan doing the QB school analysis on Jordan Love was just laughing. He's like, defenses have gotten so good at this. The simulated pressure looks are so problematic for teams when you can get pressure with 4 and when you have to worry about that, when you don't have necessarily quick answers or a quarterback who can process quickly or who can play make the way a quarterback like Jordan Love can. This level of aggressiveness, like I don't want to hear about the mush rush anymore. You can contain rush with 4 and also use things like simulated pressure to your advantage. You can contain rush with 4 guys, even if one of those guys is a safety or a slot corner or a linebacker. Now, some of the interesting things that they do, if you're going to do it on early downs, the problem is all the games that they run, if you've got Rashawn Gary looping all the way around the formation or you've got some tackle and stun on, sometimes you can get gashed because they're running right into where you're trying to run this game. So all of a sudden, you've got that defensive tackle slanting outside, that defensive end coming inside, and by the time that defensive end has come around, you're already out the gate. Or you've got a guard pulling around and now you're kicking out that guy and you get run right into. There have been a couple times the Packers have brought pressure. And I'm talking about extra bodies, 5+. And it's a screen. And it's like, that's just the perfectly wrong time to make that call. That stuff is going to happen. But when you can play like this, when you're capable of playing like this and covering your butts off on the back end and all that stuff, there's no excuse anymore for subpar execution, for subpar game scripts, for subpar game plans. We know what they're capable of. And not every offensive line is going to be as bad at picking up twists and stunts as the Texans, but even the Packers, who have been the best pass blocking offensive line in the league this year, they're going to struggle with this sometimes. It's just the nature of it. And that is your opportunity to create negative plays. And sacks are so harmful. So harmful. Warren Sharp had the stat. Getting a sack on a drive more than triples your chances of getting a stop on defense. If you're an offense, and Warren Sharp had this, drives without a sack, the league-wide scoring rate is at 25%. Drives with just one sack, 6.8%. 6.8%. You are tripling your probability of preventing a score by getting just one sack on defense. So you should be trying like hell to get sacks. It should be like your only priority. Not really, but you can live with some of these gash runs if you're creating negative plays, because 2nd and 18 is hell to get out of. And guess what? There is a little bit of a sample bias in those numbers because You're more likely to get a sack on third down. You're more likely to blitz on third down. You're more likely to face a passing situation on third down. And so you're more likely to get a sack. Well, the Packers were brilliant on third down against CJ Stroud, who is one of the best third down quarterbacks in the league this year. This is the standard. This is the new standard for the Green Bay Packers. You're not going to play like this every week. You're not going to play actually like historic out of your mind defense every week. But this is what you're capable of. And so now this is the standard that you will be held to every week. There's no excuses for bad game plans. There's no excuses for Rashawn Gary not showing up, for him not being moved around. There's no excuses for Edgerrin Cooper not being on the field. There's no excuses for anything, because we've seen what the best version of this defense looks like. And we're going to talk about that defense more in just a second with Lily Zhao next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, you can get a monster return from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Packers won but didn't cover. On Sunday, they're 4.5-point favorites against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. Now, coming off the London game, but the Jaguars are home. That's a brutal spot to be in. We saw the Packers 2 years ago against the Jets, and they looked lifeless for several weeks coming off that London trip. Like, I understand the Jaguars stayed and they played 2 games, but all the more reason their bodies are fully acclimated to London time, and now they're coming back and they're playing this game. I guess you have the full week to get prepared, but that's a lot of stress on your body. Even so, I'm a little nervous about this game for the Packers because it's a look-ahead spot. It's a look-ahead spot. Lions, 49ers upcoming. Don't look ahead. Don't look ahead. The Bears upcoming. Don't look ahead. But do go get your shot at $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. So that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your job faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire a professional like a professional. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Joining me now as part of our new weekly schedule, a day early, which is going to be now How You Doing Day, because Lily Zhao from Fox 6 in Milwaukee joins us now after a walk-off winner from new kicker Brandon McManus. Lily, how you doing?
Peter, I am doing well. That game certainly was a ride of emotion, which I'm sure everybody who was either there or watching on TV could experience. But after coming off of that high of a Packers win and a walk-off winner at that, I am doing swell. How you doing?
I'm good. It is always enjoyable to listen to all the national content after a Packers win, especially after a Packers win where I listened to a lot of the national ball knower podcasts, and there were a lot of people that picked the Texans. Let's start with the most important thing from Sunday's game. What did you think of the jerseys and the whiteout performance by the Packers crowd?
I know early on in that first half, I think a lot of people were like, get them out of the jerseys. They're cursed. They're playing terribly. I know everyone wanted at least a yellow stripe down the middle of the helmet. I thought they looked nice. I thought they were nice, and the whiteout, the crowd was great at Lambeau. So it had this feel despite it being 70 degrees outside in Green Bay, which is crazy at this time of year. But, I didn't mind the uniforms. I know a lot of people weren't the happiest with them, but you know what? It led them to a win. So I'll take it. But I thought they looked fresh.
The yellow stripe it was so easy. It was right there.
Yeah.
Just do the yellow stripe. And I would have been fine with them if this had been the Sunday night game. I think it would have looked awesome. The
It would
dark
have looked really cool.
Texans jerseys, the all whites, I think it would have looked sweet. I think in the daytime, especially a 70-degree game, in a weird way, I think they would have looked worse if this had been like a cold weather game, because the field kind of turns brown. Like the fact that there was green grass actually helped with the contrast in a weird way. Yeah. Anyway, that's not actually the most important thing, of course. But I felt like we had covered the game 6 ways till Sunday, through the game, and then after the game. And so I had never really offered my takes on the show about it. So I wanted to get that in there.
I like it.
Lily, the defense. I threw this out there on social media the other day. When was the last time against a good quarterback we saw this defense play like this? I don't need you to give me a specific game, but like this was one of the best performances we've seen in a long time from this group. When can you remember them looking like this since you've been covering the team?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I don't know, because, it's not like CJ Stroud is your typical stay in the pocket, sling it quarterback. I mean, right. He's talented. He can run up and down the field. He's done it against other teams. And so when's the last time they really locked down a true mobile quarterback? And in the fashion that they did, it's been a long time. And I was impressed because I think in the past, we think about third down situations. It was hard for this defense, whether it was 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 3, for them to get off the field. Yeah. And they did that multiple times on Sunday. They got off the field on 3rd down. The pressure actually got to CJ Stroud. We saw how flushed he was multiple times during the game, and he was pressured on a bunch of dropbacks. So he was under duress. The way that they contained him, because he's going to be a force in the NFL, right? He's going to be really good. So the fact that they did to Stroud what they did, kept him under 100 passing yards, kept him in check.
Crazy.
I mean, it was unbelievable defense. And then if you take away the 16 points at the offense and the special teams, spotted the Texans, I mean, they didn't allow a touchdown in that regard.
So my answer to this question, I actually went back and tried to find one. I think coincidentally, it was the last time they played the guy calling the game. I think it was that 2009 game against Tony Romo, where Charles Woodson, for those of you who are old enough to remember, 2009 against Tony Romo, Charles Woodson played one of the all-time great games I've seen an individual defender have in a Packers uniform, and they shut down a really good Cowboys team. We're talking about 15 years ago that they've done something like this. And I went back and looked, and I found the last time that the Packers defense had held any quarterback below 55 net passing yards, which is how many CJ Stroud had on Sunday. Here are the names, Lily. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Justin Fields in 2022.
Fair.
Tavares Jackson in 2006. Kyle Orton in 2005. And Joey Harrington in 2004. This century, that's the list. And now CJ Stroud is on that list. Like, how does this change your perception of Jeff Hafley now coming through? Because he said on Friday, don't hold us to what we have been. We are going to be a more diverse, like we're just scratching the surface of what we can be. He looks right.
Right. And this is what I like about the defense. They're so versatile, right? We saw the first, 6 games, the first 5 games, and they were getting turnovers after turnovers after turnovers. This is the first game all year they didn't get one. And yet they still found a way to win.
Right.
They got pressure on CJ Stroud. They sacked him 4 times. They hit him, I think, about 6 times. And so they can win in different ways. But I think in terms of the scratching the surface thing, I think we saw it with Rashawn Gary. I know there was a lot of talk about where's Rashawn Gary been? You move him around the field, look what happens. I mean, he was in the backfield all day. So was Kingsley Enagbare and company. And so you see the potential of this defense of, okay, they're going to get after a quarterback, or we know that they can hold their own in the secondary. So they're dynamic in that regard. The one thing that the run defense can get a little bit better, but to that regard, I think we're seeing the evolution of the defense. We're seeing Hafley again move his guys around on the field, and we're seeing them get better and better and better. And that's what is so exciting, because you pair that with this offense, and it's going to be a fun year.
You can see the model, right? Like you can see the talent. It's not like, I think Brian Flores is awesome, but you watch Minnesota and you go, they have a couple really good players, and that's kind of it. Brian Flores is just a genius. If now you're taking some of that Brian Flores madman wizardry and adding it to a defense that is as talented as this Green Bay Packers defense, they can just be so good. And I think it's so exciting for Packers fans to look at this team and go, that for as good as they were, they can be even better down the stretch. And I think that's a remarkable place to be for this team. Let's switch to something a little less pleasant to talk about, Lily. The special teams. You have Keyshawn Nixon not catch the ball and apparently not signal to anybody to get out of the way on a crucial punt that they end up miffing. Jaden Reed catches the ball at the goal line on a punt return. They give up a long kick return that turns into one of the only times that the Texans got points on a non-turnover drive. Are we just crazy? Is this just never going to change? Is this just who the Packers are going to be on from ad infinitum? Or like, how did we get here? How is this still happening?
Well, that's a great question, Peter. And I think we should ask Mr. Rich Bisaccia why it's still going on.
Yes.
It certainly is a problem area for the Green Bay Packers, because when you look at, okay, they improved the defense, the offense is the offense. They need to get something right with the special teams unit. Credit Daniel Whelan, credit Brandon McManus for coming and making the game winner. Those guys are doing their jobs. It's just the return units. So let's work on punt returns this week in practice. Let's work at being more self-aware and learning how to communicate and knowing when to field the football and when not to field the football. Because again, on a couple of those plays, it cost them points, and it cost them, the field position battle as well. And then you're talking about on opposing teams when they're returning football, it's either a penalty here, a penalty on themselves, and it's never a clean operation. So it's something they got to clean up, because down the line when these games mean more, especially against these division opponents, the last thing you want to do is give up a return or fumble it like you did near your own goal line.
Even the game-winning kick was a terrible snap. A low snap that Daniel Whelan had to dig out like a shortstop and get the ball down. And luckily he did. And luckily Brandon McManus, I think if that's Anders Carlson, it throws him off enough that they miss. And to have someone that you believe in and that in that spot is so valuable. I don't think we can underestimate that. And I said this on the show and I wrote about it in the Leap, and I don't want to hand wave the off the field part of this. And I don't want to use that as a Brandon McManus overcame such adversity when it was self-created adversity in this case. But he hadn't kicked a meaningful field goal in 9 months, had not even kicked in a preseason game. And to come in cold in his first game in months, no spring ball, no training camp, no nothing, 2 days of practice. They didn't even kick every day in practice, Lily. And he comes in and does that. It is pretty remarkable. Even if you excise the ugliness of the reasons that he wasn't on a roster and all of those things, even just that context is remarkable.
It is. And the fact that he hit it twice, right? Because he hit it and then he got iced.
That's right.
So the fact he made it down the middle twice is impressive, because that's what Green Bay's been missing. It's been a consistent kicker after Mason Crosby, and that's been their issue the last 2 seasons. And so you're right. He comes in cold, gets signed on Wednesday. They don't kick on Thursday in practice. And then, he hasn't kicked at Lambeau. So you're talking about, all right, at all. So can you trust him to do it? And he does it twice.
That's
crazy.
So
that's why I'm hoping, that this kicking carousel ends with McManus. They found their guy. And you mentioned the off the field stuff. I know they did their due diligence. And so hopefully it stops with him, and hopefully he's the guy moving forward because of what he showed on Sunday.
It was startling to me. I don't know how you reacted watching it when they had the line to gain for all these field goal situations where it's and they had his at the 40. And I'm just I can't remember the last, if they're maybe early Mason Crosby, but I don't even it was long enough ago that I'm not even sure Fox or CBS was using that technology. That's how long ago the Packers had a kicker where you're the 40-yard line is probably his distance. That's crazy, but that is true with Brandon McManus. He's got a leg like that. So this is a new reality for the Packers.
Yeah, and I think we saw him make a 65-yard pregame field goal during warmup. So he was really bombing it out there to start. And let's just hope it stays consistent the rest of the way, because now that they don't have to really kind of change their offense if they know they have a kicker, right? You don't have to go for it all the time. So maybe that changes the game plan for the better moving forward, knowing that if we just get you to the 30-yard line, you're going to be able to convert a kick for us. And that is something we haven't been able to say probably since Mason Crosby.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some offense, some Jordan Love when we come back next here with Lily Zhao on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. One of the biggest problems that I have whenever I go to buy tickets for a concert or a game is worrying that I'm missing something, that I'm missing the best deal. That feeling, it eats at me. It really does. That's why Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even faster. Because Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals to get you great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, which is what I would do to make sure that I have not missed out on any opportunities. Game Time is going to do the work for me. It's going to save me. I'm telling you, it's going to save me so much time. I'm so glad that someone did this. Thank you, Game Time. Plus, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go find Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins, who's going to be on this show later in the week. For some real NFL talk, find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, maybe like the Vikings 4th and 10 one. Like you don't have to do that one. I still want to see them stay aggressive on 4th down because they have Jordan Love. But we have to talk about the Jordan Love roller coaster because he has been like, his new nickname is going to be like Six Flags or something because he has been such a roller coaster this year. He will play. I thought down to down, he played excellent on Sunday. And then 2 throws where you're just like, what is happening here? And that seems to be his MO. How do they ride that line, Lily, of empowering him to play make? Because like the throw to Jaden Reed at the end of the first half that Reed drops, like, I don't know how many guys on earth could have made that throw. There's so much there that he does as a playmaker, but you just like, can we just modulate the YOLO 14% back? I don't know how they do that.
That's a good question. And that's what Matt LaFleur has to figure out, right? He said, we have to put him in better situations where he's not throwing an interception. And 9 times out of 10, when he was throwing those picks, they were in double, triple coverage. And so he wants to take the risk. And we know he can get that football in a tight window, but maybe in some instances, maybe if he's looking down the field and he's thinking, okay, there's a guy being double covered. I know I can get him the ball, but the smarter decision is let's just get the check down and we'll have to fight another down versus basically arm punting it. So I think it needs to be a self-recognition with him to say, maybe I'll kind of hold it back sometimes and just be smarter with the risks that I'm taking. Because we know Jordan, he said it yesterday or on Sunday, I'm not going to change who I am as a quarterback.
I love that, by the way. I love it.
Right. But he acknowledges he has to be smarter in those situations. And while, yeah, he does have 8 interceptions thus far, Patrick Mahomes has 8 interceptions this year. Aaron Rodgers has 7. So it's not like he's the only quarterback turning it over early in the season at this rate. So, he just kind of needs to find that balance of when the risk is okay. Of course, when you're going to win, you want to go for a win, you got to be more calculated. On that 2-minute drive that they had on Sunday, you don't want to risk it. And one of those passes was tipped and could have been picked. And so just kind of realize the situation you're in and just be smarter in those instances. And we'll see if it does moving forward.
Yeah, it's so tough for me because you watch the Tucker Kraft throw and you just go, I don't want to lose any of those. So if what I have to live with is a couple of these, like that Christian Watson one, he's got pressure in his face. That's just going to happen. You're going to sail a throw, he's falling away, trying to make a throw. It's like, it's the first one that I want to take away. And I think that they can. We've seen him we usually think about streaky quarterbacks as like, all of a sudden he's going to go on a streak where he has 5 games where he throws 3 touchdowns. That's just Jordan Love. He's going to throw 3 touchdowns every week. It seems like he's got one of the longest streaks ever going right now doing it. He's streaky with the negative plays. And so if he can just get out of that funk and eliminate those, which we've seen him do, then all of a sudden this team can be where they get you. I wonder, Lily, do you think, okay, the kicker's in, we just talked about that. The defense plays this incredible football game. If Jordan Love feels less pressure to have to do everything, if he feels like, oh, well, the defense, like with Joe Barry, like you got to score 30. If you're Anders Carlson or Braden Arvison, you got to score touchdowns. You can't trust them to if he doesn't feel like he has to do everything, could that be the thing that helps him just rein it in a little? Because like I said, it's like 10%, just a little, like 2,
just a tiny
1
bit,
throw
yeah.
even. Yeah.
Yes, and that's a good point because there's not many games where you can turn the ball over and still win, right? It's
Right.
hard to do in the
-3.
NFL because you're -3 and the defense didn't get one takeaway. And so you're putting yourself in adverse situations, you're putting your defense in an adverse situation. But I think the fact that the defense played as well as they did, you make a great point that, okay, I made a mistake, but I know my team can pick me up. And what I like about Jordan is his ability to respond after an interception. I don't think it gets him down at all because you see him throw a pick, he comes back, throws a touchdown. So again, it's just that risk and reward, but having a team around you that can, kind of negate your mistakes certainly helps. And once he recognizes that, and then you're right, maybe just rein it in 10%. Because I'll say this, the back half of last season, when he was playing the way he did, not turning the football over, we saw how dynamic that offense was.
Yeah.
So we want that the rest of the season, right? Just get these throws, these interceptions out of the way. Let's play some clean football against the Jaguars and keep it moving from there.
Let's end there. The Jaguars this weekend. After that, it's Lions, Bears, 49ers, a big stretch in the NFC, although we'll see where the 49ers are with all these injuries. Like they are kind of a mess right now. This Jaguars game has you get the big game against the Texans. There was some chirpiness, like that had a playoff kind of atmosphere on Sunday. This has all the makings of a trap game. And I generally do not believe in trap games, which is why if I'm going, I don't know, this sounds like a trap game. That's a trap game, Lily. So
it's a trap game, yeah.
Are you worried about it at all with this team? The vibes, are they able to overcome that? Like, tell me.
I hope so, because again, you want to win the games you can't win, right? And Jacksonville should be a win for this Green Bay Packers team. We've seen it in there are 2 losses this season to the Eagles, to the Vikings. They hurt themselves. I think the only team that can beat the Packers is the Green Bay Packers. And they almost kind of did that on Sunday against the Texans. And so I think the talent level, there's a big disparity between Green Bay and Jacksonville. And I give the Jags credit. I mean, they played a great game in London. They're coming back from an international game.
1 out of 2 isn't bad.
1 out of 2 is not bad. And, their special teams unit is pretty good, as we saw on Sunday. So it certainly does have the makings of a let's upset the Green Bay Packers vibe, right? And they're at home. And so you don't want to see the Packers shoot themselves in the foot. I think when they go into this really important stretch after the Jags game, you want to play clean football. And I think this game on Sunday will be a good indicator if the Packers can get to that level, because they're going to need to step it up the next month after that if they want to contend with these really good teams in the NFC.
Yeah, a tune-up game for them if they want it. They have to be focused. We saw them last year. They get those big wins, Detroit, Kansas City, and then they go and lay an egg against New York, feeling like they were just going to walk in and beat that team. And that's not what happened. So they have to be able to learn from that. We'll see. Lily, we will talk to you next week. Now on Tuesdays every week during the season on Locked On Packers. Lily, appreciate the time as always.
Love it. Thanks, Peter.
All right. Thanks to Lily for joining the show. Always great to talk with her. I hope it's not a trap game. It feels like one. So the Packers have got to be ready to play. Matt LaFleur's got to get them ready. Jordan Love has got to have them ready. Jair Alexander, Jeff Hafley, all these guys. Rich Bisaccia, earn your money. Get them ready to play on Sunday. Back tomorrow, much more here on Locked On Packers. As I mentioned, this is the new schedule. So Tuesdays are going to be with Lily. Wednesdays will be, I don't want to call it Expert Wednesday, but I think you can expect that we're going to have interviews on Wednesday, always the crossover on Thursday. And we actually already have an interview set up for Friday with Kendra Middleton, who is a Jaguars fan, but works in Boston media. Excited to talk to her. She is speaking of shots of espresso, she is very much that. So excited for this week. Packers, Jaguars. I'm so glad that Tony Wiggins is going to be back. I know you guys are excited about that too. For those of you who have not been with the show long enough to know what you are missing, you will find out soon. You will find out very soon, I promise. Follow me on the social medias, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on the social medias, Locked On Packers. Subscribe on YouTube so you can hang out with us live on Sunday after the Packers game, which is not in London, against the Jaguars, so you can stay Locked On Packers.